Professional obstacle course racing is an incredibly intense sport. Not only do you have to be a proficient runner, but you also have to have the skill, conditioning, and body control to overcome a myriad of different technical obstacles. Usually these courses are just a few miles long due to how grueling they can actually be. But what if you were to combine ultra-distance running with OCR? Suddenly a 3 or 4 mile course becomes an 8, 10, 26, 50 mile event that takes the kind of grit and mental discipline that most people just don't have. But I know at least one who does. His name is Evan Perperis, and in preparation for my first marathon, which I ran for charity and largely without training, there was nobody whose advice I was more eager to solicit for my first long distance run. Evan Perperis, it is good to see you, man. How are you?
Doing good. Good to see you, Bobby.
Can you tell everyone a little bit about who you are and why you're on here?
So I'm a professional obstacle course racer for the Conquer the Gauntlet Pro Team, and I specialize in ultra endurance. So we're talking races that are 5 to 24 hours in length. And then on top of that, I usually do a couple of multi-day type events or outside the box challenges that aren't officially races to raise money for the charity Folds of Honor. They do scholarship money for children whose parents were killed or wounded in action. And then my day job is I'm a special forces officer in the United States Army. I've been in it for about 16 years, and I've got about 44 months of combat deployments cumulatively.
Dude, you're insane. I got to travel around with you for a little while in January doing something super crazy called OCR America 2. That was for Folds of Honor too, right? Like, you want to talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the OCR America 2 was my 2020 fundraiser, and the concept was relatively simple. I run a marathon-length obstacle course race for 8 days in a row at 8 different venues, starting in Long Island, New York, and ending in Kansas City, Kansas. And yeah, I just multi-lapped venues, ran miles. We raised money for Folds of Honor, and 3 big goals of the project was one, push my limits. I like pushing the boundaries of my personal limits. So raising awareness for the sport of OCR, right? Obstacle course racing is still relatively new. So I think when you do stuff like this, that really intrigues people and they want to know a little bit more about it and find out there's this whole sport side of it in addition to this, anyone can participate. So that was the second reason. And then third reason, again, was raise money for Folds of Honor. As a member of the military, I've lost friends in combat. I have soldiers that have died in combat. So I have a personal connection and feel obligated to help raise money for their kids because they can't be here to spend time with them. So, I feel fortunate that I was able to come back from all my trips overseas. And I think one of the best ways to honor them is to, not only support them through something like Folds of Honor, but you just live your life to the fullest. So, they can't play with their kids today, so you play with your kids to make it up for them.
Dude, that's awesome. We were only acquainted, when you kind of messaged me and you were like, hey, I'm doing this crazy thing and I kind of want someone to come and film this and help us to, help us to raise money with, OCR America. And I'd never done anything like that. And I didn't really know you. And over the course of that trip, I got to know you and who you were. And there's just so many amazing memories that I will never be able to forget. That was one of the best times of my life. And I want to thank you again for bringing me along. Do you think that your special forces training has anything to do with kind of that mental grit that you have, being able to push through barriers?
It's just like a self-perpetuating cycle, right? So I started endurance training so I could pass special forces selection in Ranger School and some of the other really tough military schools, because I figured if I could do the hardest challenges civilians could do, I should be able to pass the hardest one the military throws at you. And over the course while I was preparing for those schools, and then I eventually passed those, you start enjoying that feeling, right? Where that feeling of self-satisfaction when you cross the finish line or when you finish that military training course, and it just feeds on itself, and when you put your medal on your wall, whether you ran your first marathon or you won the race, whatever it is, all the pain during the race just disappears. I can't even remember the pain. When I look back on OCR America, I'm like, yeah, that was a good time. But I was in a lot of pain for that week, but I can't remember most of that. All I can remember is just hanging out with you guys and just having a blast. So, I did one OCR America in 2016. It was 7 days and it was in the summer. And It took me a couple of years before I thought it was a good idea to do it again. But I wanted to make it harder, so I made it one day longer, and we did it in the winter. And
It was freezing. It was so bad.
it was an additional challenge. The water in the summer feels nice and cool. Water in the winter feels like my legs were frozen. So
Oh, it was awful. Like, how do you deal with the pain and the like fatigue like in the moment? Like, while you were like multi-lapping these, like doing these marathons, like you weren't just like running in the freezing cold and like your feet were completely frozen, but you were also like climbing and doing these sort of like technical obstacles as well. Like, did you go somewhere and you're like, how do you deal with that?
Well, one, my sport is ultra endurance obstacle course racing, so I feel very comfortable in that environment. If you add up all the time I've spent on obstacle courses over the last 6 years, cumulatively, it comes out to about 28 days, 24 hours a day, 7 days, right? 28 days I've spent of my life running obstacle courses. So I'm very comfortable there. And, in the moment, your body goes through cycles where you'll feel good for a little bit and you'll feel bad for a little bit. And you have to keep telling yourself when you're bad, this is temporary. I'm going to feel better in a little bit. And sometimes you're lying to yourself, but sometimes you do feel better. So, that's one of the ways I lie to myself. Also, nutrition plays a huge part. Everyone's familiar with the phrase hangry. It gets exponentially worse during racing because your body is just churning through calories. So you get that like hangry feeling. So if you continue to fuel yourself, it doesn't hurt as bad. And then other than that, there's a lot of like little tricks you can do to kind of manage going through a painful ordeal like that. Yeah.
Dude, I remember one day it was a really rough day, and like you were kind of hangry, and so like one of the guys who went with us brought you like M&Ms, but a big bag of M&Ms, and you had chips as well.
One of the funny things about multi-lapping where you have a pit crew is you go out on a lap and you think about one thing for that entire lap, right? I was thinking about M&Ms or Skittles for that entire lap, and I was like,
Skittles, that's what it was. You're right.
I was like, when I get back, I'm going to take the Skittles and I'm going to carry them with me and run with them and then eat them, snack along the way. And it's going to be great. That's what I'm thinking. And I get back and there's this enormous bag. And in my mind, I'm like, I'm just so, in my exterior, I was fairly calm. I mean, people could tell I was a little bit frustrated, but in my mind, I was like screaming. I was just so angry. And so like I dumped the half the Skittles into the chips, and then I carried what was left in the bag. And that is one of the tricks where you reward yourself at the end of each lap, right? So if you're having a rough lap, you're like, all right, after this next lap, I'm going to have, and I usually use like a cheat food, like double stuffed Oreos or Skittles, instead of what I normally fuel with, which is Hammer Nutrition gels and Perpetuum, like a fat carb protein blend. So I do eat some junk food while I'm racing, but I use that as like a treat versus my primary source of fuel.
Right. So that's kind of part of the mental game too. Like the food is just kind of like a hit of kind of pleasure that you kind of use to drive yourself another lap.
Yep. And then some other little things you can use are, if I'm having trouble maintaining a run, I'll do something like, all right, well, I'm going to, walk for 2 minutes and then jog for 6 minutes or something. You make a plan where it takes the decision to run out of your hands, where now I'm following the clock. I'm no longer having to make a personal decision. The clock is telling you when to run. Or you do something like, all right, I'm going to walk for a quarter mile and then I'm going to jog the last 0.75. And I'm going to do that repeating over and over again. And as your energy level and ability to run fluctuates, you can adjust that for your own personal goals. You can also do things like pick a light pole in the distance or a tree and jog to that. But with some of the courses we were on for OCR America, that didn't really work too well.
Dude, yeah. So we talked about like dealing with pain and fatigue by kind of taking it like out of your hands, like taking the decisions out of your hands. We talked about like snacks and stuff. Are there any other techniques like that you use like when you're starting to feel pain, or like when you've got like something that's beyond soreness, like that you use like mental tricks or anything like that?
I mean, I'd say the only other one is quitting it's just not an option. It's not one of the things that I'm considering. It's my decisions are always speed up, slow down, or maintain the same pace. There's no other option. It's period. I don't talk about it. It's just not a thing. When someone asks you how many more steps you can take, the answer is one more step. And then after you take that step, how many more steps you can take, the answer is one more step. And you just keep moving, right? Like it's not going to end until you cross the finish line. So you might as well move at a slightly faster pace.
Yeah. I remember that, like, that's something that stuck with me is like that same day we were in New York, we were at Noob Sanity, and I remember you saying you can always take one more step.
Yeah. And I'd say the other thing is you never look at the distance cumulatively all at once, right? Like no one, like when you enter a marathon, you're not like 26, 25, 20. You're not counting down every mile. Don't do that. That's a bad idea. Just like at OCR America, I wasn't like 200, 199, 198, right? Like that would have been awful. It would have been completely awful, right? So you chunk it. You whatever piece you can manage, that's what you take on for that specific moment as you're running. You know, and it works the same way in real life. You know, when you started college or something, you weren't like, all right, I have X number of credits to graduate, and you start counting them down one by one and paper by paper, and you start marking them off, right? Like no one does that. That would drive you crazy. The amount of work that involved would be it would crush your soul. So, you know, you take what you can manage at the time, you deal with it, you knock out one task, and you move on to the next one. You like I said, take it one step at a time. There's a saying, how do you eat an elephant? And the answer is one bite at a time.
Speaking of eating an elephant, I probably shouldn't be eating Skittles dumped into bags of potato chips while I'm out there. So what are some like fueling strategies? Like kind of walk me through how I should be eating while I'm running this marathon.
You know, so I would eat a small breakfast, something that you normally eat the morning of the race. So probably about a couple hours before you start. The supplement company I'm sponsored by recommends 3 hours beforehand. Not really a hard rule, but that's what they like. As you walk the last 15 minutes, I would take a gel. It's just going to give you one little bit of energy or something gel-like, right? So a little bit of fast-acting carbs into your body. And then start running. I would start drinking water before you're thirsty. So don't wait till like, oh, I'm dying for water. Like, just have a couple sips of water. Since it's less than a mile, you know, for the first couple of miles, I probably wouldn't drink any water. And then probably around mile 5, I'd start what I would call your normal fueling strategy. So for the first couple miles, probably wouldn't eat anything, probably wouldn't drink any water, and then start taking, you know, I'd say you want 200 to 300 calories an hour, starting when you start your fueling. So it comes out to about 3 to 4 gels an hour.
Okay.
3 to 4 gels an hour if you're using gels as your source of fuel. In general, you want carbs. That's going to be a lot easier for your body to access and use. Liquid carbs like gels or a pre-mixed drink like Hammer Nutrition Heat or Gatorade or something like that is also going to be easier for your body to take in and requires less blood shunting to your stomach for digestion. So, you know, I generally go with liquid. For a marathon, you don't really need to worry about solid food per se. You know, maybe an energy bar would be about it. But other than that, you know, every 15 to 20 minutes, I would eat something small, drink some water, and continue on until you complete your marathon.
So I've only ever done about half this distance. It's probably, if I wait until I feel thirsty, that's a bad time. If I wait until I start to feel weak, I probably missed my window.
Yes, I would agree with that statement. And it doesn't mean you can't come out of it, right? You can come out of that, but you're going to have to go through a rough patch to get to the other side. Initially, you know, I use math more or less, where you know, like, all right, 200 to 300 calories an hour, make sure I'm eating here and there, and, you know, hitting out on specific times and stuff like that. Since I've been doing this for so long, I now go off feel more or less. So for the OCR America, I was going off feel a lot. I was at the end of every lap, you know, there were certain things I always took, right? Like I always took Endurolite Extreme, so electrolyte pills. I always drank some Perpetuum. Even if I didn't drink a lot, I made sure I at least took one sip. Sometimes I downed the whole bottle. And then other than that, I would go off feel. But, you know, you want that constant drip of energy, right? Like it's like an IV, right? Just dripping in the energy so your body can continue to burn it. You don't want to eat a huge meal and then all your blood's moved to your stomach to try to digest it, but you're still trying to exercise. So lots of small amounts of fuel spread out continuously is what you want.
Is there anything else that somebody who's starting their first marathon ought to look out for? Something like anything that like you might have like at some of your first races been like, oh, I did not expect that.
Yeah, there's a couple actually. Chafing is a big one. So I would don't a lot of people on their first marathon are like, well, I got to look good. New racing top, new shorts, new shoes, wrong. So something you've run in before and you know is not going to cause problems. So it should be, shoes you've done training in, socks you've done training in, shirts, etc. Obviously, chafing between the legs is a hot spot. So I'll use something like squirrel's nut butter down there. The one that really caught me by surprise, not me personally, but I saw some awful things in my first marathon, was chafing of the nipples, right? So if you have, this shirt's not a super good example, but if you have, you can see my Mudgear shirt has logos on it, and your CTG shirt has logos on it. You'd be surprised. A shirt like that might make your nipples bleed. And I saw dudes at the first Marine Corps marathon I did with blood streaks coming down their shirt, and I was horrified. So I'd watch out for some chafing. Other than that, the nutrition is really the big one. You don't want to, like I said, you don't want to wait till you're tired or thirsty to really start consistently fueling. And most people hit a hard wall around mile 20 because they haven't been fueling and or their body's not ready. So I think you should be good on the fueling. We'll see about you how ready your body is.
Hey, all I can think of is like the pain will be momentary, but the memories will last forever, especially on camera. So if it's more dramatic, it's better. So the worse it feels at the very end, probably the more happy I'll be with the video. Just not in the moment.
And, if you're having a lot of trouble and you're like, Evan wouldn't be like this. On my first marathon in 2003, at around mile 22, I was like, this is the dumbest idea I've ever done. I'm never doing this again. I just want the suffering to end. However, I just need it to end. I don't, if I black out here, that's fine. If I make it to the finish line, that's fine. I just want it to end at soon. And I made it to the finish line, but it was a rough day. I bought a picture after that race. This was back when they charge you for pictures, the Roadrunner companies did. And I bought the picture because I was like, well, I'm never doing this again, so I better buy the picture so I can remember it.
That's not how things turned out. Man, thanks so much for talking with me and hanging out and giving me advice. Where can everybody find you? How can we get a hold of you?
So my Facebook is completely public. Feel free to friend request me. It's Evan Perperis. Should be the only one. EvanPerperis. I'm on Instagram under Ultra-OCR Man. And then my company website is teamstrengthspeed.com. You can also find us at Strength and Speed on Facebook, Strength and Speed on Instagram. We have a podcast, Strength and Speed. I have a book, Ultra-OCR Man. It's on digital, hard copy, and audio. And then I have 5 other obstacle course racing related books. So some of them are training plans. Some of them are more like history of OCR. So a lot of great content there. And I write articles consistently. So if you follow my Facebook, I funnel everything through that.
I'll let you know how it goes.
I'm excited.